Hi, I'm Andy McLaughlin from Wisher Guitar Lessons, and I'm at the Edinburgh Guitar and Music Festival with John Goldie.
Hello.
How you doing, John?
I'm very good, thanks.
Excellent. And can we just start off by just telling the viewers what you're doing at the Guitar and Music Festival today?
Okay, today I'm doing a seminar on arranging pop and rock tunes for solo guitar, which is something I've done quite a bit of. And hopefully some people will come along and learn how to play a pop tune.
Excellent. So obviously you have a wide and varied background of playing.
Yep.
So I believe initially you were an electric guitar player. Could you just talk a bit about how you arrived where you are today?
Okay. Initially I played a lot of electric. I was a session player. I worked with a lot of American Motown artists when they toured the UK and Europe. And I've also done such diverse things as Kid Creole, who's a New York funk artist, and I've actually worked for Andrew Lloyd Webber, who's not a New York funk artist, obviously. And yeah, so I did that for a long time, but I had a lot of downtime when I was on tour, so I bought myself a good acoustic and started writing music, and then sent some away and basically got interest from a label in Germany, Acoustic Music, and they recorded an album for me, and it went from there. So
excellent.
It's the start of it.
So is that pretty much how you're spending your time now, playing the acoustic, playing your own music?
Yeah, pretty much. I play solo acoustic guitar and also have a band, and I play all over the world, mainly solo all over the world, and with my band more in the UK.
Cool, okay. And you play with Martin Taylor in the Spirit of Django?
Yep, I found a member of Spirit of Django with Martin. And again, we've played all over the place. We won quite a few awards at one time, jazz awards, and we did music for the Renault Clio advert, which was popular at the time. And then recently we've been doing the music of Spirit of Django, but with philharmonic orchestras, which has been really interesting. A completely different way of working, obviously, with an orchestra, but it's interesting as well. So that's the last thing we did. We don't do so much now, so we just do like more one-off projects with it. But it's good, still good fun. So did that just come about initially just as a mutual sort of love for Django's music? It came about originally because I met Martin Taylor at a gig once, and he's the only non-rock guitar player that I had liked at that point, apart from possibly George Benson or somebody like that. I didn't want to speak to him at the gig because I'm a bit kind of funny about going up and talking to people, and my wife or then girlfriend said, like, go and speak to him, So I went up and spoke to him, and then he asked us to join his company, and then 2 days later I was at his house, and then about a month later I was on a gig with him, and then about 2 months later I was on tour with him, just the two of us together. And from then on, Martin had the idea of doing Spirit of Django, which was pretty authentic to the sort of Django. I mean, Martin can play really authentically in the Django style, but he wanted to do a sort of modern twist on it. So we had a sort of kind of more modern jazz sax player called Dave O'Higgins, who did it at the time, and it was great. So we did a couple of tours with that, and some albums and stuff, and it was great fun. So, and I'm still really good friends with Martin, so we hook up all the time when he's around. So
cool.
Yeah, it's good.
So just in general, guitar playing, learning the guitar and being a student of the guitar, and constantly improving. How's your feelings about that, especially at an event like this where there's seminars there for students to learn? How do you?
I think, well, for me personally, it's an ongoing experience. I'm always learning stuff, and I'm always trying to get better at what I'm doing. I mean, I'm self-taught. I went to, as you know, Frank Henry, who's a great guitar teacher who lives in our kind of area in the west of Scotland. And what I did with Frank was I learned how to read music from scratch, which was quite difficult, given at that time I was a pretty good rock guitar player. But when I was about 12, I could play any Lynyrd Skynyrd tune, Zeppelin, anything. So I was like the boy who could do that kind of stuff, all done by ear. When I went to Frank, I went back to basics to learn how to read music. I think it's the thing people can't do because they get fed up and they don't want to be embarrassed by playing, Baa Black Sheep when they can actually knock out a really good rock guitar solo. But I was lucky because I could split those two things in my head clearly, so I had like what I could do and what I was really good at and what I couldn't do. And yeah, that made a huge difference to me because I understood a lot more about what I was playing. Because when I went to Frank at first, I played him some stuff and he said, I can't help you son, I can't play that. I said, well, I don't want to learn that, I want to learn how to read. And he said, oh, good, take your coat off son, sit down. And that was it. I was there for years, and that made the biggest difference to me by miles. Even if I just looked at it, you know, earning money wise, if you can read, there's so much work you can do. A lot of the pop gigs, it's a reading gig. I think a lot of people just think, well, it doesn't matter if you don't read, but it's important for that thing. If you want to be a professional player, unless you just happen to be really lucky or absolutely fantastic at one thing, it's better to be, you know, a bit more diverse. And then you've got a, you know, it's like if there's a show in town and somebody says, do you want to play guitar? If you can read, you've got a chance. If you can't, you've none, basically. So, and it's the difference between earning money and not sometimes. So I think it's pretty important.
See what you were saying there about just, you were talking about when learning, and you were saying how here's what I can do that I'm good at here, and here's what I'm not so good at. Do you think it's important that students realise that it's okay to be good at one thing, but to be completely hopeless at another?
Yeah, definitely.
Because a lot of students, I find, they think that they almost protect what they've got, and they don't like to hear of it. It's almost like they rationalise why it's not a good idea to learn how to do or something like that.
I think part of the problem as well is, like, obviously a lot of people are obsessed by speed, so they try and play as fast as they can, which is basically down to technique. So if you practice your technique, you will be able to play faster, obviously. But in studio work, for example, the hardest thing to do probably is just like strumming really basic chords, you know, perfectly in time with a really rounded sound, sounding the same all the time. That's hard if it's just you and a click track and it's a bunch of chords and you're sight reading the chords. You've never seen the chord before, and you're strumming away and it's maybe like C and G, and then suddenly it goes to E flat. It still has to sound just as round, and you know, with chords that are a little bit trickier to play. So I learned that from the first few sessions I did. I found them a bit of a roast up, and it was actually just, you know, chords and rhythm. Now, I mean, I've got a good sense of time and I can play in time, but when you're under pressure and it's a click track and there's people staring at you through the glass, you're seeing the music for the first time, and you've got to play everything in time, it becomes much more difficult. So I think that'd be one thing to, you know, bear in mind for people, and that's why I was able to do that, split that in my head. So, you know, obviously you can impress people by playing something, but in the studio people are not impressed by that. They want you to play what you have to play right first time. So it's a totally different world. A lot of people hate it because they feel as if it's not as much of you musically, it's a bit more like a robot, you know, but that's what that is, you know, that's what that business is. So if you can do it, great. If you can, you probably won't get work in that side of the industry. So in my opinion, I try and learn everything, try and get as good at everything as you can, definitely. Of
course. So obviously then you've got your own albums. I believe you've got 5 albums.
I've got 8 albums.
8 albums, right. And are all of those albums kind of is it acoustic you're playing in?
There's some electric. The last band album, I did one just kind of rock out solo just for a bit of fun at the very end of it, which will probably confuse the people that have been buying all the acoustic stuff. But yeah, it's mainly, the first album I did was a sort of more jazz album, and then after that it was like solo acoustic, and then it went on to, you know, I've done 2 band albums as well, but the majority is solo acoustic. Yeah.
And so what is it, what are you pushing right now? What's your latest release?
The latest release is a band album called Chocolate Meze, and it's just got a great review last week in the Scotsman, and it's getting airplay at the moment, so I'm kind of working on that. And also last year I did an album for acoustic music in Germany, which is like some pop tunes. They asked me to do, I did a book and a DVD for them on how to play like my versions of Smoke in the Water and Honky Tonk Women. So I did one album of like 70s rock tunes that I grew up with on electric, but I arranged them all for solo acoustic. So because it's Smoke in the Water, it's iconic tunes, that's really popular with people, so they asked me to do a DVD and a book on that. So I did those 2 tracks on how to play that, and then they wanted me to do a CD, but pop tunes. So it's pretty diverse. There's Dolly Parton, there's ABBA, there's, you know, sort of disco stuff. There's all sorts of Johnny Cash. There's a whole bunch of stuff on it. But it's that's a challenge in itself, because as soon as you try and do solo arrangements of, like I did September, for example, by Earth, Wind and Fire, there's quite a lot going on in that. So it's quite tricky to condense it down to solo guitar. But yeah, it's a real challenge. The rock stuff was a real challenge as well, and strangely enough, a lot of that is in Dadgad. Which you wouldn't expect, but they sort of work quite well in Dadgad. So Yeah, it's a bit of a journey when you start that, but it's a great journey because you learn so much by doing it yourself, because you've got to, once you've committed to do it, you've got to work out how to do things. Trying to bend strings with vibrato while there's a chord and the bass line at the same time is really, really tricky to do. That's a pain in the neck to say the least. But if you don't do it, then you're not really committed to, to playing the tune as well as you could do. So you have to push yourself with it, which is great, because that helps you develop as a player as well.
Yeah, I suppose like what you're saying, and certainly for myself, including loads of students as well, I suppose you've just got to take the stuff that might scare you, and just commit yourself to.
Yeah, definitely. Not be afraid to take on something. I mean, I've recorded a version of Mission Impossible, for example, which is pretty tricky. And funnily enough, a lot of metal players in Europe have started to learn it and send me clips of them playing it. I don't know why it's appealed to the metal fraternity suddenly, but I did that purely as a challenge because it's 5/4 time and it's kind of all syncopated and it's pretty difficult. But yeah, it's fun as well, and it's like I say, it's good when people send me like videos of them playing it and stuff. It's great because if it's inspired people to think, oh, I could do that, that's great.
Yeah. Just then talking about obviously your career, like you tour the world.
Yep.
You've got 8 albums.
Yep.
A wide variety of different styles. But aside from that, just obviously having to make a living doing that. Obviously the pressure of being on the road and travelling around and all that. What advice do you have for the budding sort of guitar player that would like that sort of
lifestyle? Yeah. Well, first of all, I'd say it's a great lifestyle, but also it's difficult because you have to, there has to be a way of continuing to earn money. So there's several ways you can do it. You could be part of like shows that tour constantly all the time, which is one, it's like a regular income. Session plays are a little bit difficult because that's a bit sporadic. There's not as much of that work. If you do what I do, which is just like write your own music and play your own stuff and go out and do it, then you have to be completely behind that all the time and keep sort of pushing yourself all the time, because realistically agents really represent people they can make a lot of money from, and if you're a solo guitar player, there's a limited amount of money they'll make from you as an artist. So yeah, you just keep going at it. Traveling the world is great because everywhere is a different market, so that's a good thing to do. Yeah, and like I said before, if you were serious about music, I'd try and be as good at as many things as you can. So I try and learn how to read music. I try and get a bit more involved in it. And again, it's like if somebody offers you X amount of money to do a show that's at the local town hall or something, if you can read, you can do it. You'll make that money. The next person might be 1,000 times faster than you, but can't read, so you'll be 1,000 times faster, but sitting in the house. So I think it's a combination of what do I actually want to do, because it's a little bit difficult to be unique as well. So like what I do is relatively unique within the acoustic genre. Nobody does quite what I'm doing, so that helps. And if you write your own music, obviously that gives it a uniqueness, so that's really helpful as well. So yeah, a combination of all those things. I think having a bit of an idea of what you'd really quite like to do, and then having a realistic look at what do I need to do to achieve that, I think is important. Also, it's important to try and, if you think, well, I'd quite like to, be in an orchestra, or be in a band that, reads music or whatever, try and go and actually see what's involved in it, and hopefully meet somebody who's quite a nice person that will actually tell you what it's like, as opposed to, yeah, it's all fine. Because it's quite difficult at times, especially if you're reading something for the first time. There's a lot of pressure. It's not as easy for us on guitar. Like trumpet, they've got one note to follow. We've got positions, where do we play it, sounds, everything all at the one time. So you'll get like, you'll get literally 2 seconds, 3 seconds to see, Henrik's feel or wah wah or something. At the same time, you're trying to follow the music. So that's quite a lot of pressure, and it's achievable, definitely, but you would need to maybe do a bit of homework in that and figure out what's involved in it. And if you wanted to do like what I do, the solo stuff, go to festivals, see what the standards like, check people out, meet people, talk to them, ask for advice, all that kind of thing. It's probably worth doing, I think.
Cool. Just before we finish up, what are you up to over the coming months?
Coming months, I'm doing a writing project for London, a big London publishing company, so I'm finishing that off during June. Then July I go to Germany for some concerts, and also I'm filming an online concert at Acoustic Music Then I go to Tuscany after that in Italy, and I'm teaching at the Mediterranean Guitar School. So each player has a week there, and people fly about from all over the world to come to Tuscany. It's a nightmare. It's a beautiful villa, pool. They've got their own chef. Great weather, great food. Terrible situation. Oh, it's terrible. So I do that for a week, then I go back to Germany, do some more stuff. And then at the moment in August I'm doing a project which is to do with 1920s and 30s jazz, which will be at the Edinburgh Festival. I don't know too much about that yet, but it's quite an interesting project, so I'm doing that, and then the rest of the year I'll just be back to normal touring and solo stuff, and touring around the world doing that.
Excellent.
That's it, pretty much.
Thank you very much, John. I'm looking forward to catching your seminar today.
Great, no problem. Thanks, Andy. Cheers.